Yeah.
Did they really just do that?
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Glorious.
Come on.
Thanks for the easy.
Paid actor. I swear, man, like the people that get into Mythic, not like nothing against you, but I've seen worse. Like, and it's so infuriating because the people that I have to play against every time I have win-ins are like the greatest players on the planet. And like I never have this happen ever.
I understand your pain.
So upsetting that this is this type of. Oh my god.
Oh, and there goes that Kiki. Yay. Oh my god.
This opponent, bro.
Beautiful.
I swear.
What a battlefield, you know what I mean?
This is absurd. You should just concede. Like, no. This is so nasty. All right, I'm over it. Congrats on Mythic, by the way.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, awesome. Congrats on Mythic. And the other day I was playing, I didn't realize I was playing with I was copying from the graveyard Invoke Despair with the Hellraiser Dragon, and they had a Nina. Well, the tax is not included in when you play with the Hellraiser. I don't mean if I understand.
That's
interesting. I didn't have open mana, and I said, yeah, this will bring me victory, and it says just what the pay one. Yeah, like fuck.
Unless you have a sweeper opponent, this game is over.
Oh, a little Cletus action. All right.
They're still dead.
Oh, very.
Yeah.
Oh, I would have just killed them.
I want to play with my food just a little.
There they go.
Thank you.
Awesome. Nice. What a good introduction.
Stupid.
All right. Welcome one and all. Welcome one and all to the MTG Rebellion's episode 3 of the Rebelcast, our MTG podcast that we do collaboratively with members of the MTG Rebellion. I want to start off by first, of course, we've been doing it all week, but I haven't gotten tired of it yet. We need to celebrate Griffin Rider MTG beating the Trial of Zeal and making it through to the official stream team. So welcome.
Thank you. It's been a long and grueling process, but we finally got it done.
Oh yeah.
Congratulations, man.
In high fashion too. You didn't just get in there; you kicked my fucking teeth in. Let's be clear.
Absolutely. But
by grueling, he did not face or play Gruul Boats, unfortunately.
That would have been a cool pun. But yeah.
Right.
But thank you one and all for being here. We've got today our round table. We've got Griffin Rider MTG, newest member of the Rebellion stream team. We've got John Ramos MTG. We've got Louis Dragon, and we've got Darth Rictus of the Dark Stream, along with myself, Max Damage on 9s. Welcome everybody. This is episode 3. Got a few things on the docket, and those typing sounds are not some kind of sound thing that I'm putting out there. We're really in the newsroom grinding out the news for y'all.
It sounds like a 90s hacker, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I have the same. I have the typewriter keyboard as well. I
hack the planet.
I indulge in that. Feel like I'm hacking.
Listen, I'm from the 80s, okay?
Look, I mean, just because we recently found out all those Pentagon leaks were coming from a Minecraft Discord doesn't mean we're supposed to be hacking, damn it.
Please, can we not talk about that before I start lighting up everything about that case?
Oh my god. Yeah, I just realized who we brought that up around.
Please don't. I'll spend 10 minutes here going absolute ape. All right, go before I go absolute ape shit.
So today on the docket, we want to do a little bit of an introduction to Griffin Rider MTG, ask him a couple questions, let him tell you about his content creation story. I like to call it the content creation story. I think everybody deserves to at least do it once, so we're going to ask him about that. We're going to talk a little bit about MTG news, everybody's takes on this recent piece that Louis Dragon brought up regarding MTG March of the Machine not having any rare lands, what that means for the game and for you and your deck building. Speaking of deck building, we're going to go into March of the Machine spoilers. We've been, in an ongoing segment talking about the spoilers, how it's going to change things up. Now we have a little bit of a clearer picture because of early access. A few of our folks, 3 of them in here, made it to early access. brought back some data. We're going to talk about our experiences in early access, possible meta shifts, and then finally, state of the meta. We're going to talk about standard and explorer, what you can expect, if anybody can make any fair predictions at all. I mean, we all have predictions, right? But how grounded are those predictions? All right. Oh, Griffin Rider, MTG, making it through the Trial of Zeal. I tried to explain it to a friend of mine in my Discord server. Exactly why. He asked, Gilbot 9000 actually asked, why the heck do y'all line up new people against Darkstream when Darkstream pretty much conquers everybody pretty consistently? That's got to be demoralizing. I said, no. Hang on a second.
Steel sharpens steel.
Yeah, that's part of the trial, actually. It's a trial of endurance. The trial of getting back up again and trying. And so Griffin Rider really played out that story for us, trying over and over again and finally breaking through. Tell us a little bit about what motivated you to continue trying.
You know, I don't have it in me to quit. So that's the underlying goal in mind. Like I couldn't just show up once and, you know, that first time we did it, we were so close too. It was what I was
Right?
up 2-0 and then just watched it slip away, and I knew I could do it. It was just a matter of finally getting over that hump.
And to clarify, not just up 2-0. You were up 2-0 and up a game. You were literally a game out the very first time. I remember that.
Oh my gosh, I remember how sweaty I was just for him in that situation. But subsequent tries, you didn't get quite as close. I remember. There was some bad luck, combination of bad luck, a little bit of sequencing issues, which is, something we'll get to. We'll talk about because that's something I struggle with personally as a PG player. And I just have to say on Darkstream's behalf that he is kind of one of the good like elite players when it comes to just that factor, that ability to sequence the right cards and guess and predict what the opponent's going to do and how they're going to play based on their patterns. I think that's sort of where Darkstream excels.
I guess I would put it this way: when I watch semi-pros and pros play, the difference is between the top 1% and the top 0.1%. I am not in the top 0.1%. I will never play like I am. I'm going to keep trying, but like I don't have a brain like John Finkel. You know what I mean? There are some things that just it's going to take more repetition. So that's where if you're at the top 1% of Magic players, and I say that noting that like 98% are casual, you know what I mean? Only 2% really play competitively. So it's not that much of an honor, but that's where I try to play at is that semi-pro level. And that's where you got to put the reps in, you got to get the sequencing in. And that's what I love about this trial and getting to play with Griffin Rider and Dabo and all these other players that really want to get after it. You know, they got that dog in them, as they say, and they're ready to fucking get out there and get after it and learn the sequencing, learn the reps, get to the point where they're seeing all of these patterns emerge. And once you see those patterns, that's when I think you start winning tournaments. When you can see the patterns emerge and you can find out how those are going to coalesce into a pattern that works for you.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for breaking that down for us. I want to get to Griffin Rider MTG here in just a second. But that's something that we don't talk about often enough is just sort of what is the difference between, the ceiling and elite. And for you, I want to ask you, Darkstream, what do you learn more from a situation where you're challenging, where you're playing in a tournament setting, you're top eighting, you're trying to make it to number one, or how do you compare that experience to being in the gatekeeping seat, so to speak, the dojo defender, so to speak? Have you learned anything from your experiences holding the trials?
So I guess I'll start with this. When I started playing competitively, I would get my teeth kicked in every Friday night at Friday Night Magic, and that's how it all started. You know, like you go there with the dream you're gonna win the F&M foil promos that they gave out back in the day. I don't know if they even still do. I haven't been to an F&M in a while, but they used to give out sick promos. You know, like foil Factor Fictions, foil Damnations, cards that were worth somewhere between $20 and $100. And so you're battling, and the way it used to work. You know, I live in the Midwest. So the way it worked is the good players would basically form a team. They would split up the different local game stores, and then they would just go and grab all the copies of these cards. So you knew you had end bosses at every single local game store throughout the Midwest, and you just get your teeth kicked in. but you learned and you learned. And for me, I was 15, like I was a kid. I was just trying to get reps and figure out what was going on. So I spent a lot of time getting my teeth kicked in playing Magic. But it teaches you, like Griffin said, steel sharpens steel. And that for me was, I mean, I don't know, trial by fire, so to speak. I know we call it the trial of zeal, but it is kind of a trial by fire as well. And it
Absolutely.
definitely helps. It definitely helps. So it's weird to be in a position where I'm more of a gatekeeper because I've literally never done that prior to this. I've always been probably the mid level of my teams that I've been on over the years. I've either been at the bottom or I've been at the mid, but I've never been at the top before. And I've taken a lot of breaks from competitive play for different things, so I haven't had the chance to be in this position before. It's very weird for me. Never done it before.
Okay. Okay. A little bit of an unexpected answer, but I guess that's absolutely fair. Yeah, if that's not a common experience for you, yeah, this would be a little bit weird.
I mean,
But
if
you,
if I ever need an ego check, I've got two people who played on the Pro Tour multiple times that live a block away from me who are more
yeah,
than willing to give me a little ego check anytime I start getting uppity about my abilities. Like, oh, really? Let's play a little vintage. Let's see if you remember sequencing for Doomsday. And I'm like, oh, no.
yeah, you have to remember a wide variety of cards, like a large card pool to play with the folks that you play with regularly.
I would venture. You ever played Mental Magic, Max?
No, I have
Oh
not.
my, I have.
Okay. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Tell me
So
about
the
it.
premise that Ramos, enlighten everybody.
All right, so mental magic is I don't know how Darkstream played, but basically for us, when I played it, it's basically you get a stack of 60 playing cards, like actual playing cards. So like 2 of diamonds, 3, whatever. And every time some would use magic cards, but some of us would use, playing cards, both or whatever. And whatever the number on the card was, so like for magic, if you had a 2 converted mana cost or mana value or 3 or whatever, you would have to name a card of that mana value. So for example, if you had some random 2 drop from limited or a 2 of 2 spades or 2 whatever, you'd have to name, say, Time Walk. Same converted mana cost, and to get lands, you would play them from your hand. So you would draw 7, and you would put your magic card face down, and it functioned as a City of Brass or whatever that didn't pay you basically any color. It just tap for mana, never pained you or whatever, and you would cast your cards that way. And once you've cast the card of whatever mana value that is, so for once you've cast Time Walk, you can't cast it again. All right. So if you had another 2 drop in your hand, you can't cast Time Walk again. You'd have to name another 2. So like Doomblade, Terror, Children's Edict. And you would do this until somebody died. And you'd have to remember if it was a permanent or a creature, like what's that 2 drop? That's Wild Mongrel. What's that 3 drop? That's Fable. And you would do this until the game was over. And then it would get to a point of who knew more about the game than the other when you've went through like 13 to 22 drops and you're like, man, I've used a lot of removal. Now what do I play? Right. And it would get to a point where you get all the way up to, but that's mental
Right.
magic.
Right. So it's a paper boomer favorite because some of us have been playing for so long that we have like a literal $10,000 encyclopedia sitting or 10,000 card encyclopedia sitting in our brain. So for the ones that we play in the Midwest, the way we tend to do it, we don't use regular playing cards. We take a deck of 60 magic cards and we just run it up from 5, like we go, I think 10 of each color, 10 colorless. And it just goes, like 1 green, green 1, green, green, like all the way up, right? And the lands can tap for any color, doesn't really matter. But the point is that you have to keep track of these game states, and they can get complex very quickly. And the goal is to sharpen your mental acuity so that you remember to become aware of all the factors that are in play. Because normally you play a card, and people just kind of check out to a degree. They're like, okay, that's on the battlefield, and they stop thinking about it for a moment. Whereas in mental magic, you have to constantly be aware of every single variable in play, or else somebody can get edges on you. And you also have to have somewhat of an encyclopedic knowledge, which means you have to remember text. You cannot just kind of read a card, play it, and let Arena do the dirty work of doing all the triggers and everything else. No, you have to really understand the fundamentals. And so I've seen people that are amazing at this game. I'm not amazing at this game. I am mid at best. But I've seen people who are amazing that have literally played this game and figured out how to build combos into the mental magic encyclopedic knowledge they have. And so you're playing like I keep a 1 basic blue card and then a 5/1 so that I force will or Flusterstorm. But maybe I need Ancestral. Maybe I need it to be a sleight of hand if they have a Hull Breacher. Like there's layers on layers on layers, and it turns it into a very different game. But the point is that it sharpens mental acuity. And that's what we used to play between rounds at Grand Prix. Is we'd just sit down and flop some mental magic to keep ourselves sharp between rounds as we kept going.
This is really cool. I've never heard of this before. Like, Boomer Magic is a rabbit hole, you guys. Hanging out with you, I learn a little bit more every time. That's really cool.
Yeah, us boomers have a lot of old tactical tricks that we used to use.
There's absolutely no way I could ever do well at that. Like,
Well,
no, thank you.
You learn the same way you learn the game. You get your teeth kicked in for a while as you play somewhat poorly, and you start to learn. But the point is that you're trying to, you're trying to slowly but surely build up your knowledge base, and you start with basic things. Like, what if you have 2, 1, and a black, card sitting in your hand? And again, whatever the cards are in your hand, you can't actually play those cards. You have to play a different card. So I've seen hands where the guy has terror, but he can't play terror. He has to play like Doomblade or Shieldred's Edict to give you a newer reference. But you see the point, like it can morph into anything except the card it is. So you have to maintain an open frame of mind as you're doing it. It's an interesting exercise and a decent way to keep yourself sharp between rounds if you're not worried about mental fatigue, which if you're playing something like mono red, probably not.
Do you have to play a card that is in the color combination of the card in your hand? So, like, if it is
Yes.
Shieldred's Edict and it's a 1 black and a 2,
Yeah,
it has to match the. Okay.
Yep, it has to match the mana cost exactly for whatever it is, which is why when you build these 60 card piles, you're going to try and get a few of every single kind of mana cost that's common and a couple uncommon ones too. Some gold, some colorless, etc., etc. But it's just a 60 card deck. You split it literally down the middle, draw 7, and keep going, which also makes different effects more powerful. For instance, effects like Plow Under that throw lands on top of the library are potentially much more powerful because the library is being drawn by both players. So all of a sudden, you can stagger things if you know what you're doing to make sure that their draws involve certain mana costs and yours don't. And again, if you've played a card, even if you were to draw that exact same mana cost later, you cannot play that same iteration again. So if you play Shieldred's Edict off of a Terror, and then you draw a Doomblade, you cannot play another Shieldred's Edict off of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wow. Thank
But
you.
I could play Terror, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the second one, because it's a Doomblade, you can then play it as a Terror.
Yeah. I think I get it. I imagine that would be very difficult and would really show off some like experience in Magic. That's a very creative way to do that. Never heard of it before. Griffin Rider.
It's a great.
Griffin Rider got muted. Are you still here, bud? Yeah, you're here. I wanted to turn it back over to Griffin Rider here and get the focus back on him. I know we've congratulated you. We've talked about your win. But tell us just a little bit about yourself. And this is something that, for my own sake, I kind of want to know. How long have you been creating content? How long have you been playing Magic? And what has been your focus in creating content for Magic?
So I guess we'll start with when Magic started for me. I kind of take Boomer to the extreme when it comes to Magic because I started playing at the lunchroom table in like 97, 98.
Wow.
Back in the olden days. Didn't really take it serious. Probably Ice Age. That's the oldest I can remember buying cards for. But yeah, that was so long ago that I have replaced those memories with others since then. So
fair enough.
Like I said, it wasn't a real serious thing for me back then, but I did have my core group of friends, and we started making our own variations of like Arch Enemy, and we had one friend in our play group who was definitely the pub stomper of the group, and we all tried to gang up on him.
Everybody has one. I definitely had one growing up.
But yeah,
But
then adulthood set in, and I kind of set the hobby aside for a very long time. Gave a bunch of my cards away. Regret not playing. Regret not having those cards anymore. But you know, you do what you do. Started getting back into the game around when Arena picked back up. It was an easy way for me to sit down and get back into playing and relearning the mechanics and the new mechanics. And you know, that held up for a little while until, you know, every card was getting banned once a week.
what was the time period for that, for your return?
That was 2017, 2018, I think.
The
Okay.
Eldraine.
Yeah. Well, it was end of Ixalan, beginning of Return to Ravnica.
God, I missed Ixalan. Everybody who played Ixalan, I missed Ixalan.
Dinosaurs and vampires.
I came in at
Yeah,
the
right.
tail end of Ravnica and all that when Ikoria was starting up. Godzilla stuff.
But yeah, even then, I didn't really have content creation in mind. It wasn't even a spark, you
Who
know.
were you watching anybody at the time? Who were you watching?
Who was I was watching Day 9 when I started getting back into playing Magic.
Hey 9. What a mad lad.
But even then, I really wasn't watching a lot of content creators or that's like it just it wasn't even a thing then for me. Kind of even set it down again for about a year or so. Really, in that stretch between like, where was it? Late in Eldraine, early in Ikoria, when it was hard to keep a deck together on Arena.
Yeah, I recall.
But then around the start of the pandemic, right about when Zendikar came out, I got back into buying cards. And I found myself with a bunch of boxes and figured, why don't we open these up on stream? Hang out, have a good time with people, see what we hit. So what was it? Double Masters last year? That
Wow.
was the real turning point. I had some really high end stuff, got to open it up on stream, had a really good time, and things have just gone uphill from there.
You represented us a little bit with Peridabo at MTG Philly. I saw
I did.
all the great photos from that event. So tell us a little bit about your experiences there and what that did for you in terms of motivating you towards content creation.
Really, for me, Philly was more about getting out and putting faces to names that I had seen online, other big Twitter names, other big Twitch names. It gave me a chance to shake some hands and kiss some babies,
As they say.
Yeah, as they say. Really though, with conventions, my big thing is just getting down and playing cards with people I don't normally play with. So it gets you out of that repetitive comfort zone you get in your local play groups, and actually see some different decks, some different strategies.
Very
For
cool.
me, like a big part of paper for me is playing modern, and you know, you don't always see the meta decks when you're hanging out with your local groups. So it's fun to open up that experience to other people.
Very nice. Yeah. You look like you had a great time. I was a little bit envious.
It was a
that
lot
week.
of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
I wish we were all there so we could have represented the rebellion together and just taken over Philly, but
That's
it'll
the
come.
dream.
It'll come.
We will get there, right? Right, guys. That's the dream. But yeah. Thank you so
Philly
much
ain't
for
that far away. I'll go.
Yeah, I think what's the next one? Minneapolis. Speaking of Minneapolis, Darkstream, didn't you
Minneapolis is
just
in like 2 weeks, so
Yeah, didn't you just drive back from there to make it in today? I saw the image you put up in the Discord. I was kind of worried about you there, but
Oh, yeah, just a little bit of a blizzard up in Alexandria,
just a
Minnesota. Yeah.
little blizzard, Georgians, we're
Oh,
terrified of
yeah.
that word.
Nah. I suppose so. I suppose so. No, it's not that bad. And honestly, I don't know if I'll be able to make it to the PT Minneapolis, but I'm kind of hoping I can because so much fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd love to see you there. That'd be cool. All right. So let's turn it over. Louis Dragon, you brought up an article in the Discord that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. Something I didn't realize until I read it, until you brought it to my attention, which is a new set, March of the Machine, no rare lands. How does this impact the way we build decks, the way we play? Anybody can chip in, but I know Louis Dragon brought it up originally. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
I was, and I have also hadn't noticed that there are no rare lands in this set. I mean, since I started playing, well, no, since I came back, that was um, hmm, the name of this set. What was the one with Professor Onyx?
Oh, Strixhaven.
Okay. There is always been well, there is cards, and this is the first set since I have started playing. And I was expecting to get the other 5 rare lands, the quick lands that came, um,
Enemy
that
fest.
came, the last this the RBB
They're
for
from
Exia.
yeah, they're from Kaladesh, the enemy.
But no, I mean, I think is
Yeah, like
this
they should-
it makes this set a little less expensive, but also it really makes it more difficult to have good mana bases for historic if you don't want to change all your wild cards to have a good mana base. That's my personal opinion.
it does. The article does point out like a big point in it is that this may be appeasing people who are huge like collectors, want to get the whole set and don't want to have to pay the price of buying another 5 land rares that are going to be pricey. So it appeases those people. What are your thoughts on that? I'll open it up to everybody.
Thank you, Wizards. As a budget player, I can say, I am glad that there are no rare lands in this set. Like, it allows me to focus on other things. And I get that, rare lands do make things expensive, and they also make things easier to build mana bases for. I get that. But to have a set where I can focus on other cards besides rare lands is nice.
I think I don't think it's a big deal. We already have this is the last set before rotation. So rotation, we lose the slow lands from Innistrad, and we lose the Triomes, which is going to hurt the 5 color decks, the 4 color decks, the 3 colors. So like mid range and control, or all the mid range decks are going to take a huge hit here, and no rare lands is not really that big of a deal considering that once the rotation happens, we still get to keep the pain lands, which both have allied and enemy, and the allied fast lands from the previous set allow us to have untapped duels. So we have eight duels for the the aggro decks, the green white decks, the Azorius soldiers still gets to keep their 12 duels. So like I don't think it's a big deal. I think the collector thing is sort of like a nuance because like the majority of those who collect are investors anyway. So like it doesn't really matter to them. And for us as competitive players, like would we like more lands? Sure. But the fact that we have 8 duels already for the allied, it's not really a big. I think we're gonna get a rare land cycle from Eldraine, and I'm interested to see what type, because I don't think we're gonna get castles. Some prior to the cast already said we might get castles again. I think we're actually gonna get a dual set that's probably different than what we've seen.
Okay. Yeah, my bet was on the castles. Interesting to hear your take about the duel. Yeah, where I know that right now it leaves us kind of in an okay spot considering what we already have available to us, but after rotation, how do you feel about the way standard's going to look? I know, one more cycle of lands. Yeah, but yeah, our 3-deck, our wedge decks on the way out. Are we going to stop seeing like 5-color? I would certainly like to go back to just dual color decks being the dominant force. What do you think?
I mean, for me it's soft because this set has a lot of multicolored cards. All the heroes that are against the directions, multicolor.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of those. A lot of them are dual color.
Algorithms are almost are 3 colors. So for me, it's odd that you don't have like easy mana base in this set. For a set that's too much, including too much multicolored cards.
Do you think those are what took the slot of rare lands? Is having those team up cards? Like they decided, okay, let's do the team up cards because now we have room to
Honestly.
do those.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea, but the team up cards I think were more for dare I say it, EDH commander players.
Ooh.
But I mean they standard is becoming like the standard sets or the new sets are becoming like multifaceted sets. It's not just about standard, it's not just about limited, and it's not just about commander, it's all of them. And it's even possible to have playable older format cards. So they have to think about all of this stuff. And sometimes things have to go by the wayside, which is the rare land cycle. And if that means that commander players have more commanders, more legendary creatures that also help standard in a format right now with 8 sets that you can play virtually any color, all 5 of them, which is great considering Dominaria and all that other stuff that is usually 5 colors. But once rotation happens, I don't have a problem going back to 3 colors. I mean, Rakdos should not be able to cast 4 and 5 color stuff out of their mana base. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I just want I guess everybody's kind of in agreement that they want to see things get shaken up just a bit, and they definitely will.
And then there's the unintended consequence of not having rare lands. It's going to make for a more exciting limited format because the last thing you want to do when you're drafting a set is to open your pack and have a rare land as your rare, right? You want that
Yeah.
bomb. You want something you can play. Crack that pack and it's a fast land. Like, what am I going to do with this?
That's totally 100% right. I didn't
You'll
even
be
think
fast
about
as fuck, boy.
I didn't even think about the impact in limited. But wow. Cows, thank you for the follow. Go and check out the MTG Rebellion as well on YouTube. We submit these podcasts weekly on there, as well as our sideboard guides and deck techs. So go check that out. All right, let's talk a little bit about March of the Machine. Some of us got to access early access, playing that. I had a lot of fun doing that. That was my first time doing that, and I got to play like the most decks I've played in one night ever. It was a ton of fun. A lot of it was best of one, but there was some best of three action in there as well, and I got to build mono white aggro, mono green, and the Sultai self mill deck. And out of everything I played, the Sultai self mill, where I was like milling myself to do damage and boost things, it was wild. I was definitely clicking a lot. I don't see that being a very popular deck for anybody to go with week one. But considering all early access experiences, what you watched, what you participated in, how does everybody feel about it? What are some of the decks that you think are actually going to make an appearance in the meta week one? And what do you think is just all hype?
All right, I'll tackle some of this. Looking at what's going to be in the format week one, Rakdos Reanimator is going to continue to be king, but we're going to see the new Shieldred tried out in it. I don't know if it's good enough. I suspect it is. The fact that they only need to have, I believe, 8 or more cards in their graveyard for that to flip, and on the flip side of Shieldred, it just gets broken so fast. I think we're going to see that coming in like 2 or 3 at a time. And I also think that we are going to see a mono black mid range list that eschews Reanimator entirely and just says, you know what, little Shieldred, big Shieldred, that's the curve out we want. And I think it's going to be viable. I really do. Like, I've looked at mono black aggro. I've top forward with it once this season already in a pizza box open, and I've been spending a little bit of time starting to retune it up, get it where it needs to be. It already felt pretty decent. And in case you're wondering, just go ask Dabo about that, because that was what knocked him out of the last trial, was the mono blacklist I've been tuning up, and that just absolutely ranched the Rakdos Reanimator list. And I expected to see Rakdos Reanimator start pushing in numbers after it got that what was it, RCQ, the Dream Hack over in
Yeah, San Diego.
There we go. Yes. After seeing Reanimator come in such numbers, then I was on the ladder, in Diamond and Standard for quite a while there, messing with different versions of lists, trying to find a way through this Rakdos Reanimator list that everybody was on. And the best one I could find was Mono Black. I thought it was going to be Mono Blue Jin. Turns out Duress is a huge issue for that deck still, as is Graveyard Trespasser, which some of the Reanimator builds can push more towards that to hedge bets against Mono Blue Jin. So, what do I expect? I expect Shieldred to come in, make a huge impact. The deck that I'm most curious about is going to be the mono green aggro. I messed with it a little bit. It got huge upgrades in the set, between the Vorinclex, which is way better than expected, Tribute to the World Tree, very good, very strong, and the new Pelucranos, which is frankly one of my favorite cards out of the new set. That deck is aggressive. It's interesting. It is a little too linear for my taste, but there's something to be said about how fast it gets on the board in clocks. There's also the fact that it gets the Ozolith, the Shattered Spire. I would call that the sleeper green card coming out of the set, frankly. I was surprised how fast that got out of control with the Bloated Contaminator. Like, turn 2 Ozolith, turn 3 Contaminator, and by the end of turn 4, you have an 8/8 with Trample.
Ooh, yeah.
That card gets out of control really fast. So I'm curious to see that in Standard, and whether or not Mono Green has the ability to get in. Obviously, there's going to be what was it in Modern, Ancient Imperiosaur. I actually expect that to see Modern play in those Yawgmoth decks, because they play all those little walls, and then you just
Oh
convoke with
wow.
all of those and dump out. You can dump it out on, I think, turn 4 as close to a 20/20 with Ward 2 and Trample. So I think that's a sleeper for Modern, and I'm very curious to see where that goes. Ren and Realm Breaker, I think, could be a sleeper in Explorer if Transmogrify becomes a big deal, because its plus gives you a hexproof target for Transmogrify that nobody can kill. And that's something people haven't really considered with it, but I'm very curious to see that.
Wow. Yeah. That's oh wow. I didn't even think about that one. Okay.
You're welcome.
Outside, thank you. Yes. I should give credit where credit's due. John Ramos on that one. Thank you. A few other sleepers in the set that I'm intrigued by. The Bloated Processor. I've seen a few different Friction aggro decks that are based in black, and sometimes they splash in other colors, sometimes they don't. I don't know how good they are yet, but I do know that, like, you can almost get into a mono black build like I was discussing, except push it towards the Friction angle with Bloated Processors and a few others. I don't know if that's good enough. But here's the thing: you still get Gix, Yawgmoth Praetor, you still get both Shieldreds that get pluses, plus the Bloated Processor, You also get the new Lord that comes back, the Grafted Butchers. Evolved Sleeper turns into a Friction, which will get the bonus. And I think there was one other one I'm forgetting. Oh, Friction Flesh Gorger, also a Friction that gets bonuses from the Lords and also the Bloated Processors. That's the makings of that mono black deck. It just shifts it more into a Friction build. I don't know if that's better than going with the old school build of let's do Razor Lash Transmogrants to hedge against Grixis mid and Tenacious Underdog as a one of. I don't know if we want to shift that. I don't know if we want to shift Bloated Processor in when we already have Gix, Graveyard Trespasser, and Flesh Gorger, all very strong 3-drops. But the point is we can if we want. Like there is a whole nother angle to mono black that didn't exist before this set that's in now.
Y'all laughed at me about Vornclex.
I really didn't think it was going to be that strong, and then I played with it just a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, holy shit, this is amazing!"
Yeah. Yeah, I played
Like
with it.
these Praetors are the chase mythics in the set, in my opinion. Elish Norn is really good, and I expect to see 2 copies in mono white mid range, whatever you want to call it, mono white with mid range, mono white control. Expect 2 copies moving forward. That card's very strong. It's very difficult to deal with, and it pairs perfectly with Wedding Announcement and the Ambitious Farmhands, all the like the Spirited Companions, all these cards that give you a little incidental value. All of a sudden, they just let you flip Elish Norn, and that flip side of Elish Norn is basically an Alpha Strike followed by blow up the board. So it's really hard to stop these things, which is why I'm curious to see whoever builds the best Praetor deck. I think is going to have an edge in week 1, whether it's going in with black and Shieldred, whether it's going into green with Vorinclex, or going into white with Elish Norn. I don't know what the hell to do with Urabrosk. I think it's really cool. It's interesting. If it's going to go into anything that I could find, it would be the Boros Tokens build, where you're playing Monastery Mentors and you're playing 8 of those Reckless Impulse effects because you get the new version of Reckless Impulse. So Urabrosk turns that into like a mini Ancestral Recall almost, because you're going to play that instant, it's going to deal damage, and then it's going to add a red mana. So now you've only paid 1 red mana to basically draw 2 cards. And once you hit the 3rd version, you get to flip Urabrosk, and the backside of that is also fairly impressive.
One deck that I think
So
I expect to see week 1 is Orzhov Tokens with possibly both Shieldred and Elish Norn.
I could see that. I could easily see that. The only Praetor I found 0 homes for at the moment is the Jingataxias. And I'm not saying there isn't one. I'm saying I just didn't have time to look for it because I was too busy trying to break the other 4.
Yeah, Vorinclex got me to that sealed win, and that helped me in so many matches just to bail out bomb in limited.
Oh my god, yes. It's fantastic. A card I think people are still sleeping on a little bit is that Doomscar Warrior for green. That
Oh
card was
yes,
way more effective than I thought it would be. Backup is it's a sleeper mechanic. People have not been talking enough about it. It's really powerful in those aggressive builds.
don't scare a Krieger, no?
yeah,
Yeah, it's
No.
Doomscar Warrior when you get off the German version.
Ah, yeah. See the
No worries. I'm on the
Doomscar
same
Warrior.
website you're on. I know exactly where you're looking. Hello, Mythic Spoiler. I see your German version,
exactly.
and I raise you an English version when you click in.
Yeah. I'm reading that.
Nothing against Deutschland. Much love for the crowd, but we got to get the English version. Also, Tribute to the World Tree, Pelucranos Reborn. I would expect to see copies of those in Explorer in Mono Green Devotion. Both of those are triple green Devotion that can come out on turn 2 in that deck, and they will regularly. The Tribute to the World Tree is like a mini Great Henge for that deck, and Pelucranos turns into basically a mini Wormcoil engine. So you get like little Wormcoil and you
Oh
get
my
little
god.
like Great Henge while giving you 3 Devotion on turn 2. And the Tribute to the World Tree is something that it's desperately wanted because it wanted a card that let you grind even harder if you needed to. And now you have a card that turns all your elves into 3/3s and turns everything above that into a Cure, essentially. So I expect to see Cure start to lose a little bit and Tribute to gain a little bit, potentially. I'm not saying a lot, but I'm saying a copy, maybe 2 copies of Tribute will make their way in because of that triple devotion while functionally grinding. Blue Chronos, I expect to see 3 copies. That card's too good to ignore in mono green devotion. It's a house. It lets green devotion pivot into something it's needed to for a while, where it so far has been more or less play small things, force them to deal with like your old growth trolls and your cures and your Karns, and while they're doing that, you set up your Cavaliers and your Storm of the Festivals, right? But Let's imagine a different build where you take the Pelucrinoses and the old growth trolls. Now you have a ton of fucking firepower sitting there at your 3-drop. So you are turn 2 like 80% of the games. If they don't kill that elf, turn 2 you're putting out a 4/5 or a 4/4 with trample that is hard to deal with and that scales as you keep going. So you have this aggressive green devotion build that you get to build, and you don't need to go as high up the curve. You don't need the Nissas, you don't need the Ugins. You're basically mono green aggro that happens to go into devotion with Nykthos and just blow them out. That's the build I'm very intrigued by.
Can you like not put my technology out there, please?
Never.
No, I expect the Nissas were already bad anyway, but I expect the pivots to because Nykthos basically, if they don't kill it, like if they don't interact with you, you're flipping you're flipping that in like turn 3 land.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And good luck.
And it solves this issue that this mono green devotion deck has had where you're trying to play the biggest game, but what happens if somebody plays a bigger game or just tempos you? Because all of a sudden you are playing more of a tempo game against them. You're the aggro. And if they want to go bigger, they have to do it much faster now, while you still retain the ability to go big with Karns and Storm the Festivals and Cavaliers and Nykthos.
You basically just lean your curve out a little bit more, and you actually have a pivot slot where you're just like, so if they're interacting with you a lot, you're like, just Karn you. But if they are trying to go over the top of you, you just get under them, and they can't really kill all your stuff. So yeah, you actually have
Right.
2 basically primary game plans, which I like.
I love it. And we looked at the Explorer and the Pioneer builds of Mono Green Devotion, and you'd see in the past like 2 Voracious Hydra, maybe Lovestruck Beast. And every single time I looked at them, I'm like, that's not it. But like, we're waiting for something better. Well, we got Pelucranos. We got what's better. Those flex slots, boom, done, in. Pelucranos Reborn, welcome to the party. Let's get rocking.
I agree.
What other sort of impacts are we going to see in Explorer? Let's go ahead and shift to that now. We've been talking about it already. Explorer meta. What is the state of it right now? What is going to be the state of it next week? And possibly, if we get there, time permitting, after rotation. I know we just talked about Green Devotion and like that, but what are some other decks that change?
I don't know where Darkstream is on this, but it's going to be one of those we have to wait and see on. Like all the good decks are already there. So like, for example, Creativity gets a better card. They get, instead of Fire Prophecy, they get Volcanic Spite, which is basically a strict upgrade over Fire Prophecy. Now they get to actually, all their cards hit Planeswalkers incidentally, and they get to pitch just like Fire Prophecy, except now they get to hit Planeswalkers with it. Rakdos gets, if they want to go up the curve, I've seen Rakdos builds where they're going up the curve as high as putting Chandras in their Theorycraft builds, the 6-mana Chandra.
Yeah, I really
5
like
mana
that one.
Sheoldreds. And it's a wait and see, because I don't see how going up the curve makes it any better, considering that you still have to respect all the lean curves of, say, Spirits or Blue White or Greasefang or whatever. Greasefang doesn't really get anything
Thank
that
God.
I can see. They could play whatever, but the core is still together. And Vampires, which wasn't really a deck. Well, now you get to play the new card, the new team ups, where you get to play a 12/12 on turn 3 when you play Sorin. I don't know if that's good enough, but it's going to be cool to see. And it's really a wait and see game in Explorer, because you have to parse through, are these decks big enough or have enough cards good enough to take over Rakdos, Greasefang, Blue White, Gruul Boats, and many other decks. And there are some support cards. I built 10 brews, and I'm actually going to play all of these. I'm building sideboards for them now. There's some interesting takes on stuff that I saw, because I'm more of an off meta more an off meta thing, brews to see what cards are good, what cards are not. And I'm not sure if anything is going to take over, but we might get more archetypes. Like there's a few cards that are support that give like credence to hardened scales. An explorer gets another card in the botanical brawler that deals with or gets more counters. And there's a new knight. I built a 4-color, almost a 5-color knight build here. And all you're doing is just playing all the good knights with Embercleave, and you have all the lands to do it. And then some invasion of Gobakon, because it's really easy to flip this. And there's stuff that you can do. I'm just not sure if it's good enough to take over the top spots. So we'll wait and see. But I'm interested to see what Darkstream is thinking about outside of his what I came up with the run Realm Breaker was a 3-color build that he took into the what's it called? The early access and turned it just to strictly 2-color, where I was on Jund in my theory craft, and he just went to the old Gruul deck that was playing Titan of Industries with Transmogrify. So
Oh yeah.
but yeah, you just take Ren and then Transmogrify the land. They can't interact with it, and you just put Atrex into play. And then my take was theory crafting, of course, is adding black because it's basically free. And then you play Gix of Cruelty or Cruelty of Gix and Liliana to rebuy Atraxes so that if they interact with you, you're not just completely dead.
Yeah. Okay, so a few things to address here. Let's back it up slightly. A couple weeks ago, basically a weekend ago, there was the Explorer qualifier event. So I did the qualifier play-in. I started with Gruul Boats. And I remember, John, you told me about this Attracts Creativity deck, and I'd written it off. I'm like, there's no way that's stronger than just winning right away with Locust God and Sage of the Falls, and I was wrong. Very wrong. So I played Gruul Boats, and I'm like, this will be fine. Like I think literally at this point, I'm 22-1 with the deck on the ladder. This will be easy. Of course, I lose to Attracts Creativity on round 2, get a little salty, build the deck myself, and 4-0 to get in, right? So I'm in for the next day, and I should have realized Attracts Creativity, not the right call for a long tournament, just fine for a quick play-in. Much in the same way that I don't really think I'd ever play Greasefang in a long tournament, because your variance hits a little different in those long tournaments. You know what I mean? Like those combo decks need to be very consistent if you're going to play 8 rounds. And Attracts Creativity is not quite consistent enough to play for 8 rounds and say it's going to be fine. But if I'm going to play for 4 rounds, I'm just like, hey, I just got to run a slightly above average hotness level and we'll be fine. That's where I wanted to be, and Attract was perfect for that because I knew I was going to go up against other non-interactive decks typically. Not a lot of Rakdos mid-range, a lot more of the, hey, they're going to play Greasefang. So the meta for a play-in is very different than the meta for the day after, right? We played Attracts Creativity to get the play-in. It worked. It was the right choice. Should have played Gruul Boats the next day when it was going to be grindy because I got blown out by Rakdos mid-range. And I talked to a few friends afterwards. And basically what they all had to say to me, because they were in the event the next day too, is that Gruul Boats would have been the right call that day because they were seeing Attracts Creativity and Rakdos mid-range in high numbers, which doesn't surprise me. For a while there, we had Mono Green Devotion keeping Rakdos mid-range out. You know what I mean? Like everybody just pushed into Mono Green because for a year there, Rakdos mid-range wrecked Explorer for everybody, and I was part of the problem, not the solution. And I played a lot of Rakdos mid-range. And then Greed Devotion came in, and they're like, good luck dealing with old growth trolls and cavaliers and all this value. You know, we're just rolling right through you. And it did. It blew them out consistently. So Rakdos midrange faded. It went from like almost 50% of the damn meta in some of these tournaments down to a manageable like 5 to 10%.
Yeah. That.
But with the rise of these creativity lists, Rakdos midrange pummels Attracts creativity. Like it's not a close matchup. I've played it 10 times. I've won 0 of those best of 3s. I won games. I have not won matches against that deck because Thoughtseizes, Lilies, Go Blanks, good luck. You're going to get wrecked. You have to top deck so well in the post to beat them out once they have Thoughtseize, Duress, Go Blank, and Lily. It's just a nightmare. Because it was in numbers, some smart players played Rakdos midrange, which also still retains edges against a lot of the format, and Mono Green Devotion has declined in numbers because the rest of the format shifted to deal with mono green devotion. So we had decks like Rowboats, which was built somewhat to keep Rakdos midrange in check, but also to punish mono green devotion for being a little too slow. And then there were decks like Spirits that are fantastic against mono green devotion and absolute dogs to Rakdos midrange typically. So we're seeing this meta shift, right? And if you had your like finger on the pulse, Rakdos midrange was the right call a week ago. Where it's going to go moving forward is why I give you all this context. I think we are going to see reemergence of Green Devotion because of the new cards that are coming in. That deck gets the most upgrades. It gets all the new toys. Everybody's going to have fun with it for at least a few weeks while they try and figure out the best build. And while that's happening, I would not be on Rakdos midrange. If you want free wins, probably wait to see people like hop on the Green Devotion train and then just play Mono Blue Spirits and have fun. That said, with Pelukrinos coming in, having reach, that worries me about Spirits being as good as it used to be against them. Because all of a sudden there's a card that can come out on turn 2 before a single counterspell is up, like the walls are down. Shields are not up. They go turn 1 Mystic, you go turn 1 Ascendant Spirit, they go turn 2 Pelukrinos 4/5 with reach, and you go, oh shit. Because
Yeah.
you can't get rid of it. You know what I mean?
I
Like
don't.
you have
Yeah.
to hit you have to hit Aether Gusts to just bounce it back to the top of their library, and that's the best you can do against it, basically. So it's one of those things where we got to figure out what beats Green Devotion. Green Devotion suddenly got the tools it needs to beat Spirits, which was a huge issue, and it can go bigger than Angels. Then we have issues. We got to figure out how to get through it because Blue-White Control is not a reliable way to deal with Mono Green Devotion. So I'm curious to see where it goes, but ultimately, whatever beats Mono Green Devotion is where I'm going to try and focus for week 1.
Not a caveat, but more of an interesting take. So while you were talking about creativity, I had almost forgotten. But I was gonna say, when you were talking about it, in fact, the last week, like the last 5 days or so, the creativity players that were playing Atraxa, which I already knew, like after playing, I was like, this is not it. They actually pivoted to the Magma Opus, Stern Lesson, and Gear Hulk creativity decks now, and that's their pivot now.
Okay, so they flipped to the control builds and played the
Right.
Opus and Gear Hulk. Okay,
So some of them are running divide by zeros, and this is what I was going to pivot to once the new set, because I also believe that mono green gets the most, and we might see a uptick in mono green and creativity no matter what version you're playing. Basically dumpsters mono green, in my opinion. And you also have a good game against Greasefang. And your mono blue and Spirits matchup is not hard if you build your sideboard correctly. It's just Rakdos is so popular right now, and it's such a dog in that matchup. Like you just can't play it, which is why this is not a good choice. Now the control build might be fine, but that's where I would pivot to if the mono green upticks.
yeah, I could see the control build of the creativity hitting a nice uptick because it's not a complete dog Rakdos mid range, and it does have a lot of. I mean, again, it's a deck that I like as a control build because it doesn't rely on Teferi, which can be fried, and people that are running Rending Volleys, I think, have gotten the memo that you have to split your Rending Volleys with your Fries because Teferi is out there, and you have to be able to just go 2 mana, fuck your Teferi, fuck your Lyra Dawnbringer. We're not going to lose to those today; those are dying. Whereas the Magma Opus decks, they don't give a shit about Fry. You can play as many copies as you want. Gear Hulk ain't dying until the second one, and you don't care if it dies anyway because you cast Magma Opus. And they control the board a lot more effectively than Blue White does a lot of the time because they get the fiery impulses for turn 1. They get Spikefield Hazard. So those Speed Demon starts with Elvish Mystic, not as much of an issue. You can slow them down. You can turn the game around, and then you have divide by 0. Let's just push the tempo back until we get Gear Hulk and we get ahead. We just push the tempo back. So I actually prefer that for control build over Blue-White because I think it has a lot more play to it, and the instant speed with which it plays its win conditions is very appealing to me.
Thank you guys for that back and forth on Explore the meta shift. It's shifting a lot more than I thought it would. There's certainly more things to think about in the coming weeks. Do you what is your quick opinions on when will we know? When will we know when all these shifts will take place? Like it used to be a week ahead after, everything dropped 1 week in. Lately it's been like 3 days in. Day 1, I think we're going to be figuring it out, right?
And I've got a
Depends.
quick question on something Darkstream put up. Do you see Fry and Rending Volley both being pushed out by our new uncounterable hits blue-white anything card that we just got in Lithomanic Barrage?
If it was an instant, absolutely. The fact that it's a sorcery is pretty damning in my opinion because it can't hit Grease Fang in time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rending Volley and Fry being instants is huge, because your sorcery speed thing is only good against 2 decks instead of all 3. It's good. It's
Maybe
too
it's
slow.
it's an additional tool in the toolbox. It doesn't replace them, but if you
Right.
need extra ammo, it's there.
Specific decks would use it if they already have like a lot of instant speed removal for Grease Fang already. So you could probably get away with it, but I see it as like a one of, as like something very, very specific. Not you're not is it really worth a third or fourth Rending Volley or Fry, or are you putting in, Lithomatic? I just don't see it.
I see it as a theoretical check on a format I don't expect to exist. Like a format where mono white humans or mono blue spirits or anything in those blue white builds, it's just so dominant. You're like, you know what? 4 Rending Volleys, 4 Fries, and 4 Lithomantic Barrage. Fuck yo deck. Like that's where I see it taking place, is where it's the 9th card. You've already maxed out Rending Volleys and Fries, and you need that 9th piece of removal, and because the deck is just so dominant in blue or white. But this is a purely theoretical scenario that I doubt will ever take place. That said, it's nice to have the check in case it happens. If they print some busted ass humans in the next set, it's good to know that that deck is not likely to just take over immediately.
What he said.
Thank you. That's we're running out of time, guys. We're going to try to limit these to an hour. I think we got a lot of great content today, a lot of great questions asked. All right, well, that's it for me, and I think that's it for everybody else. From all of us at the MTG Rebellion, untap, upkeep, resist.
Resist.
Peace out, y'all.